All right. Well, hi there, everyone. Welcome to Les Sables d'Olonne. This is where all the IMOCA boats that are getting ready to take part in the Vendée Globe starting next Sunday are all here on the docks ready to go. I'm Will Harris and I'm from Team Malizia. And Boris Herman is going to be taking the start on board Malizia Seaexplorer, which is the IMOCA 60 behind me. And this afternoon, we're just going to give you a little tour around the boat. We're going to explain to you some of the things about the boat, some of the features, and exactly how Boris sails this boat solo around the world by himself. Now, some of you will know or have already followed some of the live tours that we've done around the boats. But as you can imagine, these boats are developing all the time. We're trying to push the limits of the speeds and we're trying to make them as fast as possible, so they're always developing. And I'm going to show you some of the features that we have on board the boat now, which is changing to adapt to this. And hopefully you can spot a few different changes we've made since, for example, the ocean race, which we took part in last year, which was a crewed race of 5 people around the world last year. So to begin with, I'll just show you quickly around the dock. So you can have a look here to the left of us. We've got over 40, we have 40 IMOCAs here on the docks here, and you can see them all with their dock sails. This is the Vendée Globe race village. It's absolutely jam-packed today. You can see all the people here who've come out here to see the start of the Vendée Globe. And for the last weeks, the race village has just been full of all the spectators ready to wave off and cheer on their favourite sailors in this race. So what we have here, we have one of the top level IMOCA 60 here behind us. And the thing that makes these boats really fast and really top level is these foils right here behind me. So on most sailing yachts, you won't really see these, and these are basically hydrofoils. And what they do is they help to lift and propel the boat out of the water. You might have seen some of the videos of us or of one of the other IMOCAs really flying out the water, and that's thanks to these foils here. This is the starboard side foil, so we have 2 of them on either side of the boat. We have 1 of them on either side of the boat, and we will use the foil that is on the leeward side of the boat, so the side that's furthest away from the wind. And at the moment they're in retracted state, and they'll actually extend till they're right down in the water, so probably another 3 or 4 meters from where I'm stood right now. But as you can imagine, for being on the dock, it's much easier to have them in their retracted and in their sort of stowed away position. We can have a look at some of the other big features of the boat as well. Right here behind me, you might not be able to see the top, but this is the 29-meter mast. They're wing masts and they're one design. So every boat in the fleet of the latest generation, they have the same masts, and that's to really keep the racing as fair as possible and to make sure no one's pushing the limits too hard with the weight and things like that, because the mast is a really important part of the boat. Obviously, it's what allows us to hoist the sails. It's what allows us to propel our boats forward using the wind. And so that's why they're all identical on the boat. And you can see some of the cool features that we have on them as well. You can see the radar there, which is about 4 meters above the deck. And there's a camera also that's looking onto the deck, so Boris can check that everything that's going on board the boat. A little bit further behind, you've got the boom with the mainsail stowed away behind. That's that long black extension off the back of the mast. And directly underneath that is you have the cabin and the cockpit. And we're going to go and have a look inside and look at what the life on board is really like living and when you're actually inside the boat, because really a lot of the action when Boris is sailing around in the Vendée Globe is going to be done from inside there, where he can be nicely sheltered from the wind and the waves, and he can spend most of his time really pushing and really tweaking the boat. He'll actually only come on the deck and on the foredeck, which is this part of the boat here. He'll only come on here when he needs to change sails, when he needs to make checks, and also when it's a very nice day, which isn't very often in the Vendée Globe, but occasionally he'll have nice enough conditions to come and sit and eat his lunch on the deck quickly. But we're going to jump on board quickly in a minute, and I'm going to show you a bit more up and close as to what this boat is really made of.
Cool. While we're on the move, can I ask you some questions?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so Alexander would like to know, if you don't have electric winches, how does Boris get up the mast?
That's a very good question. It's a real challenge on board these boats to get up the mast. As you can imagine, the wind gear, there's always various things that you might have to fix on board the boat. And actually in the last Vendée Globe 4 years ago, Boris did have to climb to the top of the mast. So what we use, because there's no electric winches, and Boris can't winch himself up there because he's the one climbing the mast, he actually has an ascenders, a pack of ascenders. So what they effectively are is ascenders are climbing gear which you attach to the rope, and they hook onto the rope and allow you to slowly propel yourself up to the top. Now you can imagine climbing 30 meters using only a thin piece of rope and having to physically pull yourself up. It's very, very tiring, and it takes them 20 or 30 minutes of a real full effort workout to get to the top of the mast. But he basically has these two ascenders that are attached, and once he gets to the top, he has a belay device like rock climbers or tree surgeons have, which allow him to release and slowly ease himself safely back down the mast. But really, we're doing everything we can on the docks here in Les Sables d'Olonne to try and make sure he doesn't have to go to the top of the mast.
Perfect. And Luke would like to know, we can do this on the move. Luke would like to know about how the boat has been developed to go from 5 people to 1 person.
Yes, okay, that's a very good question. We're going to jump inside right now and I'll be able to show you some of these little features. On deck, you'll almost see no difference at all. The boat's exactly the same for 5 people, and nothing at all has had to change on deck. And that's thanks to the cockpit that was already laid out, that all the ropes and all the controls come back to one central place. But I'll show you some of the nicer solo features.
Cool. We've just had what's the new white box in front of the mast?
Haha, okay. Why don't I grab the camera while you jump on? Okay guys, so the white box on the front of the mast, good question. So like I was saying earlier, this is your boom here with the mainsail stored away. This is the mast. And on the foredeck here, we've got this big box here. And this is basically for the rules of the race. Because we have a big keel, we have a long 4.5 meter keel with a lead weight on the bottom, and that stops the boat from ever capsizing or flipping over. But if there was a big wave to happen, or in a really unlikely opportunity, the boat was to flip over, then we need to have enough righting moment or instability for the boat to flip back the right way up. And that's what this white box does. This makes the boat very unstable when it's upside down, and we're required by the Mocha class rules to have this in order for the boat to be able to flip back the right way up. Now in reality, it's not very good for our drag, it's not very good for the aerodynamics, it's not very good for the rest of the boat, but it's what we have to do to compensate for these large foils that we have either side of the boat. And we find that these foils are much more important than a little bit of extra air drag here, but it also can be a nice little sunbed, nice little sitting spot. And you can also have, we also have here our satellite dome right here, which is allowing Boris to connect back to the land. We're going to jump back inside quickly now, and then I'll come on deck later to show you some of the features on there. So to get in the cockpit, we jump down through either side of the ears here. It's a bit of a step. And now this is us in the cockpit of the boat. So this is really where the action happens. This is really where Boris can control everything on the boat. He can check that everything's working well. It might not look so different from when we were sailing with a crew of 5. If you remember, we used to have a long bunk that would sit along here, and Rosie and I, or Boris and I, would be sitting here, and we would be playing with the autopilot. We've got rid of all that now because Boris is going to be solo. He's not going to have anyone he needs to sit next to, and instead, what we have actually is this is a connection to a big chair we have. We don't have it in the cockpit right now, but there's a big chair which Boris can sit in, and he can comfortably control the boat and be able to sit there and even have a little nap. But at the moment we don't have it installed because it gets a little bit in the way, and when there's more than one person on the boat, it's really not ideal. But for solo sailing, it's really perfect. I'm going to show you some of the other features as well that we've changed as well. It's probably my new personal favorite upgrade to the boat, and that's this central navigation seat here. So we're now looking towards the back of the boat, and we're in the entrance to the living space. So what we've put here is this nice big throne, big comfy seat here. Got a nice big padded bit here, and then this arching bit at the back. And basically this is where all the navigation can be done from. I pull down the computer screen here, I grab my keyboard there, and now I can be sat here comfortably. I can still see everything in front, I can still see all the controls and all the data screens in the cockpit. There's the view forward. But at the same time, I can be nice and comfy, and I can be looking at the navigation screen. And here I feel really safe because I'm very low down in the boat. I'm nice and dry, I'm warm enough, and I'm very comfy with this seat. And then here I can look at the weather and navigation, and this is one of the most important things of the boat, the weather and navigation, because you need to choose the best strategy in order to do well in this race. So the other thing as well, imagine it's really windy and wavy, then you're going to want to be able to jump up very quickly, but at the same time we still need to Boris needs to be able to sleep a little bit. So what he can do is he can turn this into a bed by lying back this part, lying back that, and next thing you know, you're ready to have a quick nap. And you can do quick 20, 30-minute naps. And even I can set a sleep alarm, which I have here, and I can time this. I can set a timer for 10 or 20 minutes or as long as I want, and then I know that I don't oversleep. So it's a really nice little setup Boris has here. And then also, I can pull that screen out the way, and if just to the left of me here, I have the kitchen. So this is where all the cooking and cleaning, not there's much of the cleaning to happen, but this is all right here next to me. I pull myself up a little bit more, and I can be nice and close to, this is my kettle, and this is where Boris can put some water in from the water maker pouch here. This is where the water from the water maker goes into, and it will go into this kettle here using that tap there. And then you boil the water quickly, and then depending what meal you've got, whether it's in a sachet, whether it's some pasta or whatever, rather than having to take out the kettle and tip it, when it's really wavy and it's shaking around, it can be really uncomfortable. So instead we have this little pipe here that comes out the bottom, and you can very easily and safely fill up your water, so or fill up your freeze dry pack. It's got a nice little chopping board, and this is our little bit of wood as well, because you've got to have a little bit of wood on a boat for a bit of good luck. So next thing I'm going to show you is even further back. We're getting even more comfortable. So I stand up quickly here, and so we're here on, this is the navigation seat, which sort of doubles up as a bed. But if you want to get really comfy, you're going to come to this bunk here. And this is kind of the coffin sleeping bag. So you can see it's got these walls on either side, which effectively help you to really lock yourself in, because you're bouncing around so much. You really need something to help you lock yourself in nicely. So you jump in here like this, and then I've got a navigation screen up here as well, and I've got this pillow which stops my head from going side to side. As you can imagine, the boat is, depending on how we're sailing or how much wind there is, we're tipping from side to side as well. So because we're facing forward and backwards, in order to deal with that, we've got this purchase system, and it allows us to cant the bunk like that. And then if I need to go the other way, I go the other way like this. Release that one, and then I can come the other way, just like that. So that's the sleeping setup. And finally, we have the trampoline. This is another little upgrade and a little bit of a wish from Boris. We've got all these fantastic windows in the back of the boat. It's very different to the other Imokas. We've got this fantastic view in the living area, but when you're low down and in the bunk, it's very hard to see out the top of it. So Boris asked the team if he could have this hammock at the top here, where once we have a cushion which we put on top, but from here you can actually look out the back, you can check, I can even see all the way forward here, and I get a really good overview of everything that's happening in the boat. I can see through the windows in the front as well, and with this trampoline it's nice and comfy. So I think this is a nice spot to go and have a rest every now and then, and just to be able to keep a really good lookout on everything while being able to take a nice rest. So, and also obviously another extra little bit of wood there just to make it feel a little bit more homely than the black carbon. But so this is the living space back here, and we have only a few systems. We've got the autopilot and the steering system and the connection to the rudders back here. We've got a ballast tank back there as well, and apart from that, it's really focused and designed around one person living and being in this space for 80 days, sailing around the world. So we've really tried to think of every little feature to make Boris's life as comfortable as possible. So hopefully you'll have spotted a few little differences from when we did this in the ocean race, and we were 5 people living in this space. We're going to jump forward again now, and I'm going to show you a little bit around the cockpit and how Boris is actually going to sail this boat by himself. So we're back in the cockpit now. You can see it only took me a few seconds to get from the back to here, and you've always got lots of handles to hold on to, and very important when it's getting really shaky, and especially with the foils when you're bouncing up and down. So this is basically where we control the boat. We've got 54 different ropes, which all come from various different places to the boat, and they all come to this central location where we can control them by putting them on the winches, which is these spinning sort of gearing systems on the deck here. We've got 4 of them, and we'll pick sort of any rope depending on what we're trying to do. We'll put it on the winch like that, and we pull it using the pedestal just here. So we engage one of the winches like that, and then we can turn it, and like a bike it has several different gears, so depending which way we turn it gets slower and it goes faster, and there's 3 different gears for that. As you can imagine, sometimes we've got to pull a rope really quickly, so I can engage a winch and I can lock it down, and I can also change a gear here, and then it will go super quick. We'll wind much faster, but there has to be really not much load at all when you're pulling a rope like that. Now we've got lots of different ropes, but what's really important to understand how much to pull them and which one to pull at the right moment, we have to look at the data on board the boat. So we have these B&G screens either side here. We have one up there as well, and we have an iPad as well as the computer screen in the middle. And with this, we'll be showing all our different data points, and that will help us to understand how much load we're putting into the sails, how much load we're putting into the foils, and like that, we can really control and adjust and fine-tune our boat. So it's really important to always be looking at the data.
You've just had a winch question.
Yeah.
Dave asks, did he just load the winch backwards, or are they two-way winches?
Yeah, that's a good question. For those of you who are sailors, you'll know that winches, you tend to put the rope round in a clockwise direction, so like this. But because of the layout and because we want these boats to be really perfectly symmetrical, there's ropes coming from all different directions. If the winches were all to go round in the same way, then these ones on the right-hand side would operate differently to the ones on the left-hand side. So what we have is we have a backwards winch. So you'll see this one rotates in a clockwise direction, and this one in an anti-clockwise direction. For the first few months, it always takes a bit getting used to understand which one goes which way, but for us now it's second nature, and yeah, to most sailors it feels like a backwards winch. But so yeah, this is our cockpit, and yeah, there's one final feature I wanted to show you which is also really important, and that's the autopilot controls here. So we have these data, we have one either side, and the autopilot is what's steering the boat. It's what's allowing Boris to sleep and to be able to get some rest, while also being able to keep the boat going at 100% the whole time, because obviously we don't stop while we're racing. So what we do is we'll display some data about the controls of the autopilot, and he can play with these different settings to allow the boat to steer as fast and as well as possible through the waves so that he can go and rest. And so we're always controlling, we're always adjusting this, and have lots of different settings and different setups depending on the wind, the waves, and how Boris wants the boat to sail. So this is how it's all controlled. And then the one electronic, kind of electronic powered thing, or hydraulic electronics, is the keel, and that's controlled using these buttons here. We'll press it either side, and we can hear, and I just saw Danny wobble there a bit. That's because what I was doing when I pressed that, I'm actually canting the keel. So the 4.5 meter keel beneath me, which is weighing about 3 tons, is moving from side to side, and it moves up to 40 degrees from one side to the other. And that's going to really impact the performance and help the righting moment of the boat. So we're also playing this quite a lot, just like we're playing the ropes and controlling the other things on the boat. So there's the cockpit. There's all the different controls we have. I think the final thing to point out in here is this screen up here. It's the Zeus 3S, and it's connected to our radar, to our AIS, and to our Oscar, which is the artificial intelligence camera, looking for objects in front. Obviously, when Boris is sailing solo, like, one of the most important things is to make sure he doesn't hit anything. So we have these 3 different systems which he can monitor using this screen here to make sure that there's no risk of any collision with any objects, whether they be detectable or non-detectable. We're able to get alarms through this box and make sure that we don't have any collisions. So I'm going to show you up forward in a second. We're probably going to go up via on deck. But I think one of the very important parts of the comfort has to be this here. Might not look like much, but some of you will probably have guessed what it is already. This is actually the toilet on board the boat. We have this nice carbon toilet seat and this bucket here, and this sits on top like that. It's nice and stable, and that's about as luxurious as it gets. But one thing to remember is the boat's very sensitive to weight, and this is weighing less than a kilo, and that's what's the most important thing for us. We're saving at least 10 or 12 kilos by just having this bucket instead of a proper toilet. Up forward of the cockpit, it's not a nice place to be at all. It's uncomfortable, it's dark, it's bouncy. Maybe you can show the camera quickly up there. But it's really not a space you like to be in unless you have to go in there. But as you can see, it's dark and there's not so much comfortable living space up there. And also, the further forward we get in the boat, the more violent the movements are. And that's because with the hydrofoils now, imagine this is the front of the boat, it jumps up and down like this. So although at the back you might only be moving one or 2 meters, at the front, sometimes we measure up to 12 meters of movement. So you imagine if you're a person in the front of the boat being thrown up and down by 12 meters, it will really going to make a difference, and really it's not somewhere you want to be. So we'll always wear a helmet and we'll always be very careful when we're going up here. But I'm going to take you up on deck and we're going to poke our heads in there quickly, and I'll show you some of the different sail choices and sail controls Boris has. So just on the way up quickly, I'll just show you this is our solar panels on board the boat. This is how we produce some of our energy on board. And these solar panels run all the way along the top of the boat and all the way on the coach roof. And also, you can't see it, but they actually have a grip to it. So I can actually stand on this and I can walk on it when I need to work on the boom and things like this. And that's really important for us to be able to safely work on the boat while also producing and using renewable energy on board these boats. Oh, you can see Boris there. So now we're back up on the foredeck of the boat. This is really only Boris wants to come here when he's checking, like I said, and when he wants to change between the different sails. So what I was saying earlier is we have the main sail, which is at the back of the boat, and then Boris has a choice from 7 head sails. So the first one is the J3. It's this one here. It's already hoisted and it's rolled up because we like to store the sail like this, and it's a sail that we actually need to keep up a lot of the time anyway for the structure of the mast to make sure there's no risk of us breaking the mast. It's the second smallest sail we have on board. Ahead of that we've got the J2. That's this one here, and this one's actually permanently installed. So every single boat along the dock here also has one of these J2 sails rolled up at the front, and that's a safety thing. That's to make sure that none of the sailors ever remove all the sails off the front, because without these being here, the mast would fall down. It's actually a structural point of the mast as well, so it's very important to remember that, and it's why that they make it being a mandatory part of the boat. When we're not using either the J2 or the J3, we're normally going downwind or there's not so much wind, and so that's when we start to get into the bow, the very front of the boat. We have one sail fits onto this furling drum here, and then we have 2 other sails which go right at the front there, right at the front of the boat, and they'll go all the way from the tip of the bowsprit up to the head of the mast. And that's how we really make sure we get the biggest triangulation and we get the most out of the area on the boat. And Boris will really use those sails, the biggest sails, when it's light winds, when he's trying to sail downwind and go away from the wind. And as it gets windier, you'll slowly reduce the size of the sails till you end up back on the J2 and the J3. But from here you can really get a nice overview of the boat. You can really get an idea of the shape and how much space there is up on the front. But as you can imagine, there's no protection here. You're fully exposed to the wind and the waves and the elements. And so you really don't want to be here when the boat is doing 30 knots and is nose diving into waves. So all the sails are controlled through these ropes here on the deck. They come through these things that are called constrictors. So it's effectively like, you might have seen those Chinese games where you put 2 fingers in and you try and pull them apart and they get stuck. That's what a rope constrictor is. It's actually locking the rope simply by putting another cover over the top of the rope and it's holding it in place. And when we want to release the rope, we pull off a trigger which goes back to the cockpit, and that allows the rope to free up out of the constrictor. So it's a very clever system. It's very lightweight, and it actually keeps the ropes in a lot better condition for something like a Vendée Globe race, where we need these ropes to survive the entire way around the world. That's one of the main problems and one of the main things that Boris is going to have to overcome, the fact that these ropes need to last for such a long time, and we need to make sure that there's no chafing and there's no risk of them being damaged anywhere on the boat, because it's a long repair for one person to do. The final thing I'm going to show you is just in this, is in the fore hatch here. So in order to change between the sails and to grab all the different sails, we have to get them from inside here. This is the foredeck hatch. It's very important we always make sure this is shut, because otherwise water can come directly into the boat and very easily. So this is the fore hatch here. And I'm not going to jump down, but you can just see quickly this is one of our sails there. And we've got 5 other sails lined up in here in their bags. There's some of Boris's food bags as well. There's 8 of them in total. And all the sails here get stored and they get moved from side to side depending on what tack Boris wants to be on and where he wants the weight in the boat. He'll have to move all these sails, and total it's about 400 kilos. So you can really imagine it's a lot of work to get one of these bags up on deck and to be moving it around the place. So very physical job for one person to do. And like I said, it's very dark down here, not a nice place to be. So you want to get your work done or your sail change done as quickly as possible so you can get back to the much comfier part of the boat, which is at the back over here. So, and that's pretty much the boat, or all the livable parts of the boat, and all the areas that Boris is going to be working on and is going to be sailing in and will be using for the next 70 to 80 days in the Vendée Globe.
Got time for a couple of questions?
Yes.
Right, so where do you clip your harness in?
Where do you clip your harness? Yeah, it's a very good question. So it's a good point. When we're in the cockpit, we aren't at much risk, any risk of falling overboard, because we're nicely protected. But whenever we come on deck, we are clipped onto the boat using our life jacket vest with a tether attached. And where we actually attach is into this rope just here next to me. This rope runs all the way to the bowsprit, and it runs all the way to the back of the boat. So actually, as soon as I stick my hand out the cockpit, you can clip, and then you can run all the way back up and down the boat without having to unclip at all. And that's a really nice way to make sure you keep safe, while also keeping both hands free for working or for holding on to make sure you don't fall. Obviously, the tether keeps you on the boat, but it won't stop you from being hit by a wave or being tripped over. So that's why it's really important to always keep one hand for yourself to be able to hold on to the side of the boat.
Cool. One more, maybe a bit technical, maybe.
Yeah.
When do you decide to take down the J1? How much worse is the performance with the J1 furled but still hoisting?
So the 2 sails which I showed you there, we had the J2, which is the one forward of this black one, and the J2 is the one that's permanent. That's this one. This one has to stay here, has to stay up. It's part of the rules of every America. This is the J3, which can be taken down. It's not an obligation for us to keep it up. But the reason we keep this up is because whenever we're using a masthead sail, we actually have to keep the J3 up for the structure of the mast. The only times we'll take down the J3 is when we're using the J2, because this sail doesn't require us to have the J3 up to keep the mast in one piece. So most of the time we like to keep it up, and also the sail drag is very small for the amount of security that we gain from keeping it up.
We're about half an hour. So
yeah, cool.
Probably about enough, right?
Very good. Right, well, thanks very much for joining us today, and I hope we were able to answer some of your questions. And feel free to always ask us in the chat, and I'm sure one of the team will answer any of the questions. And obviously, we're hoping the best of luck for Boris starting the race in 7 days' time. And we're into the final preparations this week. We're looking at things like the weather, the strategy, the final food packings, and obviously we're having some final farewells for Boris this week. So looking forward to seeing him out there and seeing what he can do.